Another day, another time for a beautiful achievement ranking video. But this time we're going back, way back to a time when a game was released 9 years before the creation of my own physical being, 1986. A year when a storm of 2-pound hailstorms rained over Bangladesh, an earthquake rocked El Salvador, a lake erupted with CO2 in Cameroon, I didn't even know that could happen, Chernobyl exploded and irradiated an entire chunk of our planet, and Pixar animation was started. Oh yeah, and the original Legend of Zelda came out. I probably should have led with that one. Thing is, Nintendo don't fuck around with achievements on their games, even to this day, let alone way back in the day when video gaming was in its infancy. Well, luckily, I can be grateful to the folks at retroachievements.org who brewed up some fine gaming emus that report achievement progress back to the overlords behind the scenes. Thanks to my gaming emu, I got a sensational 69 achievements for the OG Zelda experience, and now that I've conquered them all, it's time to talk about the pain I experienced. Especially when we get towards the top of the list, so grab a snack and stick around with me as we tackle ranking these achievements from least painful to most painful. But first, let's lay out the ground rules. I consider a number of factors to determine the pain of an achievement. Difficulty, time consumption, obscurity, luck factors, or even just the general lack of fun involved with the task. All of this is, of course, based on my personal experience and thoughts. I tried to calculate pain on as objective of a scale as possible, but there were moments where I looked back on an entry here and there and thought, ugh, that shit sucked. Let me know your thoughts on The Legend of Zelda in the comments down below. I also suggest, for your own sanity, that if you play this game, reference some online maps along the way. Since a lot of secrets and obscure factors are just a Google search and map glance away, secret and obscure achievements won't score much in the way of pain.
But Scooter, referencing an online tool for your whole playthrough? That's cheap. That's defying the spirit of the game.
Okay, listen. 1. Nintendo actually released physical maps with this game, even way back in the day. So using a map was intended by the creators for the Zelda gamers. I don't exactly think finding an intact physical paper map from 1986 is in my favor nowadays, so the internet will have to do. And 2, if you don't want to use a map and would rather blindly explore the world, that's your own prerogative. However, randomly running around and spending countless tedious hours bombing random walls, farming rupees for money, and burning trees in the hopes of progression for the sake of doing it the quote-unquote intended way does not strike me as an enjoyable method of experiencing this game. Last ground rule, retro achievements aren't as permanent as, say, Xbox, Steam achievements, or PlayStation trophies, so it's entirely possible that one day, the base list of achievements will be different from the 69 that I'm covering at the time of this video. The stage has been set, now let's start off with the painless side of this adventure. The first achievement is called The Legend of You. It's awarded to you fine folks who click the like and subscribe buttons. Link may be the hero of Hyrule, but the true heroes to me are you lovely viewers who jump in to support me. Seriously, the success of my Super Mario 64 achievement rankings videos, considering my channel size, was insane to me. I love interacting with you guys in the comments, and I hope I can do my job to entertain you. In hindsight, going on an hour and 40-minute rant for that video was something that could have made more sense being split into a part 1 and part 2. But I can't even express how much I appreciate you guys for watching, despite that. Okay, the real first one now. At number 69 is, It's Dangerous to Go Alone. Obtain the sword. There are actually 3 different swords in this game, so the description could technically be too vague, but between the iconic achievement name and the lack of a white sword or magic sword mentioned here, it's safe to say we're talking about the beginning sword. Normally when you come across an old hermit commanding you to grip his sword in a cave, the right response would be to punt him in the wrinkle fruit, collapse the cave around him, and start going to therapy. However, at the start of this Zelda adventure, it's okay. Enter the cave and grab a sword. It's a pretty necessary step for everything moving forward. At number 68 is, did I unlock that door? Unlock the first door in level 1 without using a key. There are different kinds of locked doors throughout the game. Doors with keyholes are opened in exactly one way, by using a key. Well, so what do we do now? Well, simply exit the first dungeon and immediately re-enter. Voila, the door is now open and achievement got. Why does this happen? I don't have the damnedest clue, but it saves me a key and it got me an achievement. At number 67 is Boomerang Amateur. Obtain the boomerang in the first quest. The boomerang is in the middle of the first dungeon, 2 rooms before the boss. Kill all 3 Goryas? These orange boomerang pricks. The first dungeon is the simplest to navigate and has the easiest enemies to fight. At number 66 is Archer Link. Obtain the bow in the first quest. Another item tucked away in the first dungeon. It's only slightly more painful to get than the boomerang because it's more out of the way to get to. You'll pass by the boomerang on the way to the Dungeon 1 boss, whereas you need to divert off the beaten path for this bow. It's still easy as balls to get though. At number 65 is Eagle Novice. Complete the Eagle dungeon in the first quest. Once you've done scouring for items, it's time to move on to the boss and clear the level. Not much else to say. At number 64 is Rupee Bounty. Have 100 rupees. Rupees are the currency of this world. Dropped by the local wildlife will be annihilating. Unfortunately, enemies only drop rupees sometimes, and it's only in intervals of 1 or 5. So farming from 0 to 100 can be kinda tedious, more to come on that later, but luckily there are several secrets among the overworld map where rupees can be obtained. Several homeboys will give you 10, 30, or even 100 rupees upon paying them a visit. If you reference an overworld map and go straight for one of the 3 100 rupee homeboys, you'll get this in a single swoop. At number 63 is Recommendation for the Old Woman. Find the letter in the first quest. Way up in the northeast corner of the map, there is a tall staircase into the mountainside. Step up and step into the cave where this man will give you special paper. This special paper will get you healing potions from numerous old women. So, achievement aside, no matter what you're doing in this game, I would strongly recommend getting this note. At number 62 is Magical Protection. Acquire the magical shield. No dungeon delving needed for this one, simply save up enough rupees and buy the magic shield. A couple of merchants sell the shield for 160 rupees. They're total asshats, but twice as blind. A couple sell it for 130 rupees, which is your typical market price. But if you really know where to look and find good deals, you can find those couple of odd dogs who will skirt you a shield for only 90 rupees. Those are the real G's, and you'll treat their sisters real nice. What am I even saying anymore? At number 61 is Good Sense of Direction. Find your way through the Lost Woods. At the very bottom left corner of the map is the Lost Woods. You need to navigate these woods in a specific manner that you wouldn't understand simply looking at the map, because on a map it just looks like regular ass woods. You gotta do a little extra research for the answer, or just watch this video. Go up, left, down, left, and suddenly you've discovered the graveyard part of the map and this achievement. At number 60 is Stronger Than Ever. Find the bracelet in either quest. The bracelet allows you to push some big rocks once you've got it. I mean, not that big, but maybe like that big. Like kinda big rocks, but not like really big rocks. We haven't talked about quests yet. When you start the game for the first time, you're on quest 1. After you beat the game and load your save file again, you're on quest 2. Or if you name your save file Zelda, then you'll automatically jump into quest 2 without having to do quest 1. Quest 2 rearranges every item, secret, dungeon layout, shop, everything. Well, almost everything. A few things may stay consistent, and the location of this strength bracelet is actually one of those few things. There's a slew of statues on a cliff ledge near the top left corner of the map. Touch a statue, get attacked by it. Fuck if I know why, but if you move this guy in the top right corner of the screen, you'll reveal the bracelet. Getting here will either require navigating the Lost Woods, or using the step ladder to cross this bit of river, which can't be done until after finding the ladder in Dungeon 4 on Quest 1, or Dungeon 6 on Quest 2. And number 59 is Optimal Level 1 Explorer. Get every item and visit every room in Level 1 of the first quest while opening only 4 locked doors. This is like a softcore puzzle, because as soon as you look at the Dungeon 1 map, you'll go, ah. Make sure you go in with at least 2 bombs, which can be bought in batches of 4 for 20 rupees in shops, or infrequently dropped by these enemies. There are 5 keys, a compass, a map, the bow, a heart piece from the boss, and the Triforce to grab. And the boomerang. Almost forgot that one. There are 4 locked doors that you should never open if you want to succeed. The first is at the top of the room full of bats with 6 blocks in the center. The second is on the bottom of the room with these 3 little slime things and a single block in the center. The third is on the right side of the centermost room with slimes and 5 pairs of blocks spread across the room. The fourth is on the left side of the room with 4 blocks and the orange Goryas? Boomerang pricks. Again, these are doors you never want to touch. And verbally, that probably sounded more complicated than this task actually is. I'm serious, just look over the Dungeon 1 map online for Quest 1, and before unlocking any door with a key, just stop and think to yourself, okay, is there any other way to get into that room without using a key? And if so, take that route instead. At number 58 is Boomerang Pro. Obtain the magical boomerang in the first quest. Nothing crazy, except you'll be venturing into the second dungeon for the boomerang upgrade. You're capable of exploring Dungeon 2 before Dungeon 1, but it's a hair less obvious to find, a hair more challenging to navigate, and the boomerang room itself involves taking out considerably more bulky blue Goryas? I'm not even gonna try. The boomerang pricks. It's a step up from the last entries, but still a piece of cake. At number 57 is Moon Novice. Complete the Moon dungeon in the first quest. Moon is dungeon number 2, and since you don't need any items to access it, you could just as easily stumble on it before dungeon 1. I'll put Moon Novice here above all the dungeon 1 achievements though for 3 reasons. First, if you were blindly exploring without referencing a map, dungeon 2 is slightly more hidden than dungeon 1, which has a big obvious bridge leading right to it. Second, dungeon 2 has more aggressive enemies in it. We aren't in the zone of true headache enemies yet, but these snakes will bum rush you like you're made of mice. Final reason, you need to come supplied with a few bombs in order to take out the Dungeon 2 boss. At number 56 is Bested Dodongo. Defeat Dodongo without being harmed in the Moon Dungeon in the first quest. Dodongo is the boss of Dungeon 2, essentially just a Triceratops looking fool that aimlessly wanders around. Without a shadow of a doubt, the easiest boss to take on damageless. Simply feed it 2 bombs or trick it into wandering through a bomb explosion smoke and then stab it once. Dodongo is barely interested with your presence in the room anyways. If you get hurt by it, you're probably a Nimrod. If you do get hurt, you can leave the room and re-enter to give it another go. If you ignore the damageless challenge and kill Dodongo after getting hit, you'll have to start a new save file to try again, so keep that in mind. Luckily, Dungeon 2 isn't that far into a new game. And number 55 is Magical Upgrade. Acquire the White Sword. First, you'll need to find 2 hearts to reach a total of 5 hearts worth of health. Whether you do this by beating the first 2 dungeons, exploring the overworld, or some combo of both is up to you. Once you're healthy enough for a sword upgrade, follow the water up the mountain and get your white sword in this cave. It's in the same place for both quests 1 and 2. And number 54 is Rupee Hoarder. Have 255 rupees. This is literally filling your wallet to the absolute max. Do I take the Bugatti or the Rolls Royce today? Rich people problems, am I right, peasants? I can't feed my child. There are a couple ways to go about this. You can farm enemies until you get there. It's not the most time-effective method. Remember that enemies only drop money in increments of 1 or 5, and that's if they drop money at all. The more optimal method is to reference an overworld map and find the rupee reward secrets. In Quest 1, there are a total of 3 secret rooms that will net you 100 rupees, and several more that'll hand out 30 rupees and 10 rupees. Whichever method you prefer, it's only a brief matter of time until you're sitting on fat stacks. And number 53 is, boy, this is really expensive. Equip the blue ring in the first quest. The blue ring cuts all sources of damage in half for you, so probably a pretty good investment to get in any playthrough. I say investment because the ring will run you a pretty penny. 250 rupees to purchase from the shop, so you're looking at doing 98% of the progress towards the last entry I just discussed. Then, once you have the funds, work your way to the only merchant with the blue ring in the top left corner of the center lake. Piss off the top middle statue for a secret shop, and done deal. At number 52 is Swordless Level 2. Complete Level 2 without owning a sword. You can do this in either quest, but I strongly suggest doing it in Quest 1 because it's much easier. In fact, this is pretty easy difficulty-wise, but it's more of a puzzle and planning challenge. Normally one would think that playing a Zelda game without a sword is pure blasphemy. How do you even do that? I mean, it's pretty simple, you just do it. Nobody is making you walk into the cave and see the old hermit with the sword. That being said, this does leave you with a startling lack of ways to kill enemies early on. Like literally no way. Scour the map for some secret rupee rooms, buy a candle, and farm some bombs from enemies. Optionally, if you want to spend more time to have more options, you can farm 80 rupees for the arrows and go get the bow in Dungeon 1. Once you're ready to crack into Dungeon 2, you'll be able to get the most of the way through by simply avoiding fights. Use your not swords to kill a room full of snakes, boomerang pricks, and save at least 2 bombs in your back pocket for Dodongo to get the W. At number 51 is Manji Novice. Complete the Manji dungeon in the first quest. The third dungeon is also available to access from minute 1, but compared to the previous dungeons, I think it has the logical next step of challenge. There are 2 ways to get to the boss room, but both involved lead to the same room with an encounter of 3 orange Darknuts. Very unfriendly enemies for the early game because they take a couple blows, dish out some fair damage, and can outmaneuver you. One avenue allows you to dodge them, but the other route forces a fight with them. And then the boss itself, Manhandla, may be the embodiment of chaos. This 4-headed cretin will shoot projectiles at you from 4 gaping maws. With the removal of each maw comes a speed boost. I mean, this guy will ricochet around like a rubber ball on speed. All in all, a good progression of difficulty, but we're still on the easy side of the list. At number 50 is Ready to Sail. Obtain the raft in the first quest. The raft is tucked away in the same Dungeon 3, but now you are forced to combat 6 orange Darknuts in a single room and carefully navigate a second room packed full of 8. You may not have to face the boss Manhandla for the raft, but a shit ton of these armored asswipes takes the cake over that. At number 49 is One Step Across the River. Obtain the step ladder in the first quest. The stepladder can be found about halfway through Dungeon 4, and luckily none of the enemies along the way are all that tough. The reason this entry ends up here is because you actually need the raft from the aforementioned entry to even get to Dungeon 4. At number 48 is Level 4 Secret Room. Find the secret room in Level 4. This is specific to Quest 1 and is referencing this room packed full of rupees. Honestly, it's barely different from finding the stepladder. It's only a couple rooms deeper into the dungeon, but one of the paths you could potentially take sets you up with a rematch against Manhandla. Not too crazy, but this is a step up from only facing the regular enemies that guard the stepladder. At number 47 is Snake Novice. Complete the Snake Dungeon in the first quest. Well, now we're just finishing Dungeon 4 all the way through, going a few more rooms beyond the secret Rupee room and fighting Gleeok, a rather pissy two-headed dragon. He's actually the most engaging boss fight. You gotta strike both heads multiple times to sever them while dodging a flurry of magical balls. Not like enchanted testicles, more like dragony death balls. I don't know, maybe they're testicles. Even when you chop off a head, it keeps on keeping on as a phantom of its former self, floating around blasting at you. At number 46 is Bested Aquamentus. Defeat Aquamentus without being harmed in the Eagle Dungeon in the first quest. Aquamentus is the boss of Dungeon 1, this green unicorn dragon dino thing. He'll spit energy balls at you in waves of 3. If you keep your distance, you should have just enough reaction time to weave the balls. If you get hit, you can leave and re-enter the room for a retry. If you've already killed him without netting this achievement, you'll have to start a new save file. But luckily, it's only Dungeon 1, so you're not exactly replaying a large chunk of the game to get back to Aquamentus. Pro tip, try to maintain full health all the way up to the boss fight. The enemies leading up throughout the dungeon are easy enough to dodge around, and if you're careful and with full health, you can shoot sword blasts at them from across the room with maximum space available for dodging. At number 45 is Magician Link. Obtain the Book of Magic in the first quest. Interestingly enough, we're going non-linear and skipping right ahead to Dungeon 8, where the magic book resides. You only need to have purchased the candle to get to Dungeon 8 and burn this awkward little tree near the bottom right corner of the overworld to expose the entrance. Immediately from the Dungeon 8 entrance, you're only 3 rooms away from the magic book. Take a left to encounter yet another Manhandla fight, then left once more to arrive in a room with 2 orange Darknuts, 1 upgraded blue Darknut, 3 mummies, and 2 of these static ball things that temporarily prevent you from using your sword upon contact. Once you clear this room, you may push the leftmost block and travel downstairs to the magic book room. While this is a pretty clear-cut path, I wouldn't suggest running straight for this upon booting up a new save. These enemies are a bit savage to attempt at minute 1. At number 44 is More Bombs. Obtain your first bomb upgrade in the first quest. There are 2 places you can get a bomb upgrade in Quest 1, a secret room in Dungeon 5 and a secret room in Dungeon 7. But since you need the recorder found in Dungeon 5 to enter Dungeon 7, it just makes sense to talk about the bomb room in Dungeon 5 first. Make sure you have at least 100 rupees in your wallet before you go jumping in, because that bomb capacity ain't free. You're also going to need at least 3 bombs and a key on hand to get through all the necessary doors. On top of that is a rather brutally cramped room with 5 blue Darknuts to take down. Possibly the most annoying enemies in the game. You got a bit of an annoying path to travel, but upgrading from 8 bombs to 12 is well worth it. At number 43 is Musician Link. Obtain the recorder in the first quest. This is an item found in Dungeon 5 and is mandatory to beat the game. It's actually only a couple rooms away from the bomb upgrade, except now you'll have to take on a second room full of blue Darknuts to reach the basement with the recorder. If you were annoyed with them the first time, you can enjoy a little bit more pain the second time. At number 42 is So Many Bombs. Obtain your second bomb upgrade in the first quest. Now we'll talk about the bomb room in Dungeon 7. While you don't necessarily need the previous bomb upgrade to grab this one, I'd highly suggest it. It's gonna take you a minimum of 7 bombs to reach the upgrade room, 1 to blow a hole in the wall, and at least 6 to kill a room with 3 Dodongos. I say at least 6 bombs because that's assuming you never miss one. Then you'll have to cough up 100 more rupees to pay for a 16 bomb capacity bag. At number 41 is Wizard Link. Obtain the magical wand in the first quest. This is found in Dungeon 6, and while it can be accessed from the get-go without needing another item, that would be a suicide mission. There is a dangerously long trek through the dungeon with no less than 2 mandatory fights with Wizrobes. These are the only enemies in the game that can rival the frustrations of the Darknuts. They may not be armored, but they will float around blasting magic blasts that will melt your health away like butter in a sizzling skillet. It would be in your best interest to get the white sword, blue ring, and a few additional hearts added to your health before running into a magical slaughter fest. At number 40 is Level 7 Secret Room. Find the secret room in Level 7. There are a couple prerequisites needed to reach this room. You'll need the recorder from Dungeon 5 to get to Dungeon 7. You'll need a couple bombs to open up new pathways towards the secret room. You'll also need a fat chunk of succulent meat to feed this hungry prick. Meat will run you 100 rupees if you shop at the average store, but if you hit up the guy with the blue ring, you'll get a solid discount down to 60 rupees. The actual route through Dungeon 7 is fairly safe compared to the previous 2 dungeons. You can avoid most fights, and a majority of the enemies are boomerang pricks, something we should have ample experience dealing with by now. At number 39 is Pyromaniac Link. Obtain the red candle in the first quest, a stone's throw away from the secret room in Dungeon 7. Really, the only additional challenge is a required fight with boomerang pricks, and that's not too crazy. It's the journey that puts up a bigger fight rather than the destination. Truth be told, the red candle's barely anything exciting. Like, I didn't go through hell and high water to be awarded with a fucking candle. Walmart sells those in packs of 5 for like 10 quid, maybe? I don't know. What the hell's a quid? At number 38 is Lizard Novice. Complete the Lizard dungeon in the first quest. Lizard is Dungeon 5, and although we've dipped our toes in several other dungeons previously on this list, I would confidently claim that Dungeon 5 is one of the hardest dungeons in the first quest. You got Darknuts, you got mummies that hit like a truck, you got these floating bunny heads that hit like a truck, you have a boss in Digdogger, which requires the recorder to deal damage to. That means you can't avoid half the dungeon and go straight for the boss kill. You have to explore most of the dungeon and encounter all those Darknuts. At number 37 is Dragon Novice. Complete the Dragon dungeon in the first quest. Dungeon 6 is also among the hardest dungeon in Quest 1, because you have a lot of fights with Wizrobes ahead of you. If you've got a decent amount of upgrades, it's nothing special. It helps that the boss, Gohma, is one of the easiest bosses in the game. You are required to go get the bow from Dungeon 1 and buy the arrows if you haven't already, but with bow and arrow in hand and one well-placed shot, it's an insta-kill move. At number 36 is Bested Gohma. Defeat Gohma without being harmed in the Dragon dungeon in the first quest. We're adding a no damage stipulation to a boss fight I just referenced as easy as balls. The majority of the challenge involves reaching this point in Dungeon 6 to begin with. But be careful, while you could score this in 10 seconds or less, if you kill Gohma while taking a hit, you may find yourself having to start a brand new save file, and that means going through the more arduous part of the process to get here again. At number 35 is Bested Digdogger. Defeat Digdogger without being harmed in the Lizard dungeon in the first quest. You might get a sense of deja vu here. Similar to the last achievement, the journey through the dungeon to the boss is considerably more work than the actual boss. Digdogger is kind of a doofy ass boy that does a whole lot of nothing. I will say, it is more of a task to dodge damage in this fight. There are statues in the corners of the room blasting magic balls at you, and as you damage Digdogger, he'll start bouncing around faster and faster himself. Like every other damageless boss challenge, as long as you leave and re-enter the room to retry, and not accept failure by killing the boss after getting hit, you don't have to worry about booting up a new save file. At number 34 is Demon Novice. Complete the Demon dungeon in the first quest. Adding on to the linear journey to reach Dungeon 7 is not one, but 2 bosses. Without distractions, you are looking at 2 nearly back-to-back encounters with a Digdogger rematch and Aquamentus rematch. Now, these are 2 bosses that lean closer to the easy side of the difficulty scale, but this is the first moment where we're looking at a bit of an endurance run to hit the end, so come prepared. At number 33 is Complete Upgrade. Acquire the Magical Sword. Getting a sword that doubles the damage of your white sword, which in of itself doubled the damage of your sword, it sounds like an A-OK decision to me. You're gonna need 12 hearts total of health before the old hermit deems you worthy of such a sword, meaning 4 hearts on the top row. You get an additional heart of health upon beating each boss in a dungeon, and you get 5 hearts scattered about the overworld. No matter how you slice it, you're either doing 8 of the 9 dungeons and finding 1 more heart in the overworld, or you're scouring the land for all 5 overworld hearts and getting through at least 4 of the dungeons. Most likely some combination of both. So, you're looking at a large percentage of Quest 1 exploration to get this sword, but it's a natural stepping stone of progression and it's well worth it. At number 32 is Level 8 Secret Room. Find the secret room in Level 8. You're looking at needing a pocket full of bombs and facing 2 rooms filled with not only blue Darknuts, but energy-spitting statues to get near the secret rupee room. There's good argument that this could be among the most difficult individual rooms in all of Quest 1, so it's worth coming juiced up. You're crossing paths with a Manhandla, and if you're suboptimal, a blue Gohma, along the way. It's bad enough bumping uglies with 2 bosses, let alone realizing that neither of them are the dungeon boss that come with a heart and Triforce piece. Is it worth the hassle for 10 rupees? I mean, it's an achievement, and you'll probably be nearby when completing Dungeon 8 for the main quest anyways, so yeah, whatever. At number 31 is Lion Novice. Complete the Lion dungeon in the first quest. 2 mandated fights with gangs of blue Darknuts while playing a bullet hell metagame is enough for a mid-list justification here. Let alone fighting a 4-headed Gleeok as the primary boss, easily the most engaging and skill-checking boss of the game. You're looking at one of the more daunting asks for a casual playthrough. At number 30 is Locked Doors Master. Obtain the magical key in the first quest. Tucked away in the opposite direction of progress through Dungeon 8 is the magical key, an item that negates the need to have key economics moving forward. Locked door? Eat my ass! I have a total of A keys. Letters are infinite, numbers end eventually. Oh no, wait. Letters stop at Z, and numbers just keep going. Magical key! This means beating a blue Gohma, which isn't the worst thing. The bigger headache probably comes with the tight squeeze room full of Darknuts and bouncing bunnies that guard the magical key room. Pretty closely tied with beating Dungeon 8 in general, but I'll put it a hair above since I enjoy a fight with Gleeok, and less so a fight with Darknuts. At number 29 is Heart Master. Obtain all 16 heart containers in the first quest. Layman's terms, max out your health. You start with 3 by default, you'll pick up 8 more from completing all the dungeons, and there are 5 more scattered across the overworld. Burn one of the forest trees along the shore due south. Never pick the red potion over the heart. If you do that, I will publicly shame you in my next video, and possibly cuck you. That's a fucked up thing to say. I'm sorry, I probably won't cuck you. Bomb the corner of this giant boulder in the corner of the desert, grab the heart. Bomb the center of this rock wall at the very bottom of the map, right where the water starts, grab the heart. Step across these oceanside platforms once you have the step ladder for a heart. And just a couple steps north from here, sail away once you have the raft and enter the building for a heart. At number 29 is Red Hype. Obtain the red ring in the first quest. Now we're taking steps into Dungeon 9, and with a name like Death Mountain, you'd be daft out of your gourd to expect a walk in the park. You don't even walk past the front door bouncer without completing all of the previous 8 dungeons and showing a fully completed Triforce. Now that you get to sit at the bar, let's talk about the fact that you got a wide spread of enemies to fight in each room. And by widespread, I mean mostly Wizrobes. The only thing that sucks more than the fights is trying to get to them in the first place. Dear Lord, man, look at this map and tell me that you understand how it works right off the bat. I think I spent more time with the game paused trying to wrap my head around how to navigate this shit show than I spent actually navigating this shit show. At least getting to the red ring is the least complicated process in this dungeon, and getting a red ring that doubles the blue ring defense, which already doubled the defense of your green potato sack, is worth getting a little lost. At number 27 is Ready to Face the Beast. Obtain the silver arrows in the first quest. Well, now you gotta get a fundamental understanding of this map, because the silver arrows in Dungeon 9 are tucked up in the far corner. You can't even say fuck it and go for the boss, because you need the silver arrows to kill the boss. At number 26 is The Quest is Over. Defeat Ganon in Death Mountain in the first quest. Now that you've got the silver arrows, it's time to backtrack through this hellhole labyrinth and find your way to the final boss of the game. And then actually beat him, which is not the most fun thing. Ganon turns invisible, so most of the combat is just blindly stabbing the air and hoping he's there. He also deals mad damage if he bumps into you, so if you're lacking the red ring from this dungeon, you might sweat through your health pool pretty fast. All in all, I covered most of these achievements before reaching this point of beating the main story, so that just goes to show that if you intend to see the credits roll, you can collect most of this list along the way. At number 25 is Bested Manhandla. Defeat Manhandla without being harmed in the Manji dungeon in the first quest. This is the first flawless boss fight that made parts of me agitated that I didn't even know I had. First off, if you don't enter the boss fight through the side bomb entrance, you'll get trapped into the arena, meaning if you take a hit and need to retry, you either need to kill the boss, which is 100% the wrong decision, or let it kill you and get sent back to the dungeon start. Now, there is an angle where you can easily score this. If you get lucky enough and can place a bomb right in the path of where Manhandla is traveling, you could wipe out all 4 heads in a single explosion. Even a single missed head will exponentially decrease your odds of success, because Manhandla will be bolting around faster than you can avoid. Despite that, going for a one-tap bomb is still your best bet for minimal headache. Minimal, not none. And yes, this annoyed me more than the general course of beating the game. At number 24 is Dungeon Cartographer. Find all compasses and maps in the first quest. Each of the 9 dungeons has a compass and a map to find. This means you'll be exploring each dungeon a little more thoroughly than just beating the boss. This does add more time and effort tracking down these items, as well as exposes you to more enemy encounters, which in some dungeons is more detrimental than others. The biggest pain point is definitely having to traverse the final dungeon for 2 more items. And number 23 is Bounty Hunter. Receive money from every hidden moblin in the first quest. Seeing these fellows is a good habit to get into anyways, it's free money. But there are a lot of these guys hidden around the world, and unless you have an unparalleled memory, it's impossible to keep track of which ones you've already visited and which ones you're missing. It'll probably turn into a game of running down the list until you hear the satisfying. And number 22 is Eagle Expert. Complete the Eagle dungeon in the second quest. Alright, look, I know there's room to debate that this achievement is quicker and easier than most before it on this list. You could name a save file Zelda and jump right into Quest 2 before even touching Quest 1. Quest 2 is hard mode though, and personally I think doing Quest 2 before Quest 1 is such an unconventional way to play the game. Like, there's an outlier type of gamer that goes that route, but it's definitely more natural to beat Quest 1, then have your save file roll into Quest 2. Generally, besides being harder, Quest 2 is widely just the more painful playthrough, like to the point that I think it suffers from poor game design. Dungeon 1 is found in the same location in Quest 2 as it is in Quest 1, and although the layout is slightly more complex than its Quest 1 counterpart, it's still packed full of the easiest enemy types. And number 21 is Moon Expert. Complete the Moon dungeon in the second quest. Dungeon 2 has completely relocated since Quest 1, now being in the secret staircase where the blue ring could previously be purchased. You could actually avoid most of the dungeon to get to the boss, so it's a fairly easy trek. There's a much earlier encounter with Gleeok this time around, so the boss fight will make up for it. And number 20 is Manji Expert. Complete the Manji dungeon in the second quest. Dungeon 3 in Quest 2 is super awkward though, man. The boss fight, being 3 Dodongos, is only 2 rooms away from the main entrance. You can get your extra heart, but the Triforce piece isn't nearby. There's still more dungeon to go, which really flips everything you've learned up to this point on its head. A fight with a gropey hand and boomerang pricks still stands between you and the true finish line here. And number 19 is, boy, this is really expensive too. Equip the blue ring in the second quest. Just like Quest 1, you'll have to nearly max out your wallet at 250 rupees to purchase the blue ring. This is more tedious than Quest 1, because there's only one secret rupee room in the overworld on Quest 2 that will reward you 100 rupees. There are less secret rupee rooms in general. Most actually take away from your bank balance, so unless you happen to dedicate every rupee to the blue ring from the start, you'll have to do some money farming. Once you're feeling rich, make your way up to the very top right corner of the map, climb these secret stairs behind the spooky green tree, and get yourself some much needed damage reduction. And number 18 is Bested Gleeok. Defeat Gleeok without being harmed in the Snake Dungeon in the first quest. It may seem weird going back to Quest 1 achievements after going on a Quest 2 streak, but I think some of the harder Quest 1 achievements need to mingle in above the easier Quest 2 achievements. Even though we're only referencing the 2-headed Gleeok, it was still a bitch to take him down without taking a hit. You're constantly having to dance around to avoid his projectiles, while also finding opportunities to get close enough and sneak in a stab, and then make a hasty retreat. Even when you sever a head, you got a ghostly head floating around at you and continuing to shoot projectiles. This task is like trying to bob and weave around a professional boxer, but the opposing boxer is Wolverine. This one irritated me. It's challenging. You can't just kill the boss and try again later without having to start a new save file, since this achievement does not count for any Gleeoks you encounter later. At least when you make a mistake, like all other no damage boss achievements, you can step out of the room and re-enter for a new try. And number 17 is Bested Patra. Defeat the Patra south of a wise man in Death Mountain without being harmed in the first quest. If you're looking at this god-awful map layout, you need to face this one, right here. This is the worst of the damageless bosses. Patra can send out his minions to cover almost the entire screen. Dodging his blood-hungry minions is super difficult, which makes you want to kill them faster, but you gotta get uncomfortably close for that, and that opens you up to punishment. After several attempts, I think I got lucky, because once I whittled down about half of its offspring, it stopped shooting them out in the wide-range circle attacks. As a result, I could easily finish the job. Still, don't walk into this expecting an easy steal. And number 16 is Get to the Level 4 Secret. Find the secret room in Level 4 in the second quest. Second quest, Dungeon 4 is where things get out of line moving forward. There are one-way doors between rooms, secret paths to rooms by just like walking into the walls, secret rooms where you're trapped and have to surrender either 50 rupees or permanently lose a heart from your max health, and red and blue static enemies. If you get hit by the red static enemy, you can no longer swing your sword permanently. The only way to reverse this effect is to go get hit by a blue static enemy. These are the elements that make Legend of Zelda's second quest an ordeal on a grander scale. The path to the secret rupee room includes a Digdogger fight and a Darknut room with red and blue static balls. At number 15 is Snake Expert. Complete the Snake dungeon in the second quest. Take all the terrible Quest 2 headache tropes and force the player to engage with them to beat the dungeon. I'm done talking about it. At number 14 is Lizard Expert. Complete the Lizard dungeon in the second quest. On one hand, you got two bosses to fight through, a Manhandla and a three-headed Gleeok. On the other hand, there's none of that second quest unfair bullshit that littered Dungeon 4. On the third hand, you can only get to Dungeon 5 with the raft found in Dungeon 4. The raft, mind you, is placed in a secret path beyond the Triforce, where you would normally end the dungeon. So we got another example of this dungeon itself being relatively inoffensive, but the way there being more troublesome. At number 13 is Dragon Expert. Complete the Dragon dungeon in the second quest. This dungeon is packed full of Wizrobe rooms, but luckily none of them are required fights to get to the end. There is a requirement to fight 3 different bosses back to back to reach the Triforce. You got a Gleeok, then a Manhandla, then a blue Gohma, with energy spitting statues one after the other. At least the bosses stay dead once defeated, so you can chip them away one at a time if you're struggling to maintain health. The more annoying aspect are the red static balls that will disable your sword in the room after Gleeok. Yes, you could bomb the Manhandla and you only need arrows for Gohma, but you're inevitably gonna have to backtrack quite a few rooms to touch a blue static ball if you want to get your sword re-enabled. The swordless debuff will last beyond the dungeon too, so do yourself a favor and treat the red static balls like the Black Plague. At number 12 is Lion Expert. Complete the Lion dungeon in the second quest. We're actually talking about Dungeon 8 before Dungeon 7 in Quest 2, but it's still a handful. First, you have a deceitful map. It looks like a clear linear path, but it takes a few twists and turns. Then you got not one, but 2 triple Dodongo rooms to fight through, which drains your bomb inventory. Odds are you're going to need to dip out for a bomb refresh. There is a bomb upgrade room located in the same dungeon, but you better have 100 rupees on hand to shell out if you want to drink from that fruit of thriving. What the hell did I even just say? At number 11 is Demon Expert. Complete the Demon dungeon in the second quest. Let's just call a spade a spade. Dungeon 7 in Quest 2 fucking sucks. Let's just make every room chock full of blue Darknuts, said some troll-ass game dev almost 40 years ago. You're also forced to cross a room where you have to sacrifice either 50 rupees or 1 max health to reach the end. Plus, if you take a wrong turn, you could cross a second room that demands a heart or rupee sacrifice. Everything in my gut says to solidify this as the second worst dungeon across both quests. Second worst because, breaking into the top 10, at number 10 is Quest Master. Defeat Ganon in Death Mountain in the second quest. Just like in Quest 1, you'll have to beat all 8 dungeons leading up to this point and learn how to read this incredulous dick smear of a map, which at minimum includes making your way to the much needed silver arrows, and then to Ganon himself, who, once again, is no pushover of a fight. But now that you've beaten the game twice over, let's cover 9 more achievements that I found to be even more daunting and hellish. At number 9 is Heart Master 2. Obtain all 16 heart containers in the second quest. The breakdown carries over the same as from Quest 1. You start with 3 hearts, pick up 8 more over the course of beating the dungeons, and have 5 more hearts hiding around the overworld. At number 8 is Dungeon Explorer. Find all compasses and maps in the second quest. At least with collecting all the hearts, I only had to beat the boss for each dungeon. Getting all the compasses and maps leads to more extensive exploration of each Quest 2 dungeon, which means more enemies, more resources sought out to deal with said enemies, and more bullshit unfair shenanigans. That's all there is to say. It's a spread of challenge, some time investment, and map reading to overcome this hurdle. At number 7 is Fully Loaded and Upgraded. Get all items and item upgrades in the second quest. This is fairly synonymous with the previous entry, although I honestly couldn't tell you if all the maps and compasses are also required because I actioned them both at the same playthrough, which I recommend doing them both together anyways to reduce redundancy. You'll already be exploring all these dungeons from top to bottom, so may as well not leave anything behind. In addition to all the new tools you pile up in the inventory, you'll also need both bomb capacity upgrades, the blue and red ring upgrades, the white sword and then the magic sword upgrades, There's also 2 items that can be removed from your inventory over the course of the game that you must possess at the same time. One being the chunk of meat, same thing with the magic shield. It's entirely possible that this item gets eaten by a pulsating anus, which is bad on a multitude of levels, but the primary reason being that it means repurchasing the item so that you can have the full tool belt. And number 6 is Darknut Bombing Expert. Clear the item room in level 3 only using bombs and without owning the magical sword or leaving the room. Okay, a few things to note here. This is specifically talking about this room in Dungeon 3, Quest 1, with the 8 orange Darknuts roaming around the stairs that lead to the raft. Second, the achievement clearly states only using bombs, so I have no idea why it mentions owning the magical sword like that has anything to do with anything, but whatever. Play by its rules and stay away from the magic sword for now. Orange Darknuts can be killed with a single bomb, and with 8 Darknuts to your 8 bombs, that sounds like a good ratio. On top of that, you can easily hit multiple Darknuts with a bomb to improve your efficiency, and these guys have a slight chance of dropping additional bombs, which will be a huge lifesaver to the health of your bomb inventory. On the flip side, these guys wander around very unpredictably, which makes it easy to miss bombs. And sometimes their armor just kicks in at random times and completely negates the damage. I seriously don't understand how this transaction works. Sometimes bombs hurt, sometimes they don't. That suddenly makes an inventory of 8 bombs a concerningly low resource and a concerningly low boiling point for my patience. And I know what you might be thinking.
Well, there's 2 bomb inventory upgrades, and the achievement doesn't say you can't grab the raft and come back later. Why not get the raft, sail to Dungeon 4, get the step ladder, go to Dungeon 5, get the flute, get the first bomb upgrade, go to Dungeon 7 for the second bomb upgrade, then come back with double the bombs and half the headache?
And my response to that is, At number 5 is Blue Darknut Expert. Clear the item room in level 5 in the first quest without taking damage, owning the magical sword, or leaving the room. We're talking about this room near the very top with 6 blue Darknuts and a lone block in the middle that once you've cleared the room will be pushable and opens a way to the flute. Now here, banning the magical sword does actually add challenge to this task, since you can't hit these guys at max damage. That means you have to spend more time in this room, more time dodging their chaotic patterns, and more time wishing you could just dive headfirst into a pit of vertically placed swords. Dear heavens, this was hell in Hyrule. Like, let's just take one of the hardest enemies to deal with, multiply it by 6, and tell the player to clear them all out without getting touched once. And number 4 is, it's not easy being green. Beat the game without obtaining a ring in the first quest. Those blue and red rings that provide damage mitigation are no more. It's a full playthrough where everything hurts as much as it can. Fundamentally, this really doesn't change how you play the game, except I guess you'll be less risky and spend more time farming rupees to ensure you always have a healing potion on hand. Other than that, it's not too hard. Mandatory Darknut and Wizrobe fights will always be at the high point, but at least you're allowed to use every available tool, aside from the rings. I think the bigger sense of pain comes from what I'll just dub on the spot as the completionist paradox. Do I tack on as many playthrough achievements as I can in one single run to have a dummy hard experience on the first go around for the sake of efficiency? Or do I draw this out longer into several playthroughs without stacking the various challenges asked of me, but the completion journey just becomes more arduous as I now run through the entire game multiple more times? Any achievement that asks you to do something over an entire playthrough that wouldn't naturally occur is a prime candidate for top of these lists. At number 3 is 8-Bit Master. Defeat Ganon in either quest without being killed or using Quit Out. Obviously going for this is easier in Quest 1 and should be your move, unless you're a straight up mad lad. Before I even get to the step where I talk about not dying, let's address the other logistic of never quitting out. That means you gotta have an entire campaign run up without interruption, from the moment you start a new game file to the moment you save Zelda at the end. Now clearly you can pause the game whenever you want and leave your emu running to step away and go to work, school, sleep, whatever, but the entropy of real life is a real thing. Power outages happen. Computers, emus get tired and crash. This is the reality that can halt you. Now, getting into the not dying part, the hardest point of a playthrough is actually at the very beginning. You only have 3 hearts, the weakest sword, and the shittiest armor. On the flip side, if you happen to die early on, when it's most likely, it's not as punishing because you've barely played into the game. This starting time is best spent collecting rupees from secret caves, buying the blue ring, buying the candle and some bombs, getting 3 of the 5 heart boosts from the overworld, and as a result, getting the white sword. Once you get past that initial setup, the difficulty curve winds down immensely. Remember, you don't have to pick every fight. If you can just dodge enemies and keep on progressing, do it. Only kill what must be killed to progress. Skip all the random items if they aren't required to beat the game, or if they don't provide any sort of stat buff. It seems like an undertaking to beat the game in one sitting deathless, but if you pay attention and think about your actions, you'll be fine. At number 2 is Swordless Master. Get to Ganon's room in Death Mountain in the second quest without a sword. Leaving behind your primary means of offense suddenly changes everything about how to play the game. Now the whole journey becomes a puzzle, trying to plan out how to do things and in what order. Starting out was always a challenge, because I couldn't kill anything. I needed to find money to get a candle and some bombs, so I got 60 rupees from secret rooms that didn't involve destroying the environment. Now I could afford a candle, the worst possible means of killing something, but a means nonetheless. This candle allowed me to burn a few trees and find more secret rupees, which I used to buy some bombs. With bombs in hand, I took to level 2, where I could easily dodge a lot of the combat. Sometimes. I could blow up Manhandla and get the flute. That would be all for Dungeon 2 for now, as the boss guarding the Triforce piece was Gleeok, and he can't be harmed with candles or bombs. Next up was a trip to Dungeon 8, because within there was the holy grail for a swordless run, the magic wand. Aside from the fact that I could shoot supersonic death at foes from afar, I could also hit people with the wand. This dealt damage similar to the white sword and would be my saving grace for this journey. After bombing the necessary wall needed to get in, I fucking forgot that the stepladder was a necessary piece to get in. So, slight detour, I went and grabbed the strength bracelet, used the flute to open Dungeon 6 and collect the stepladder. Now I could grab the magic wand from Dungeon 8 and so many doors of progress opened up. I cleared Dungeons 1, 2, 3, stockpiled enough rupees to buy the blue ring. Dungeon 4 proved to be a major pain in the ass for quite a while, with the mandatory Darknut fights and saving enough bombs to kill the triple Dodongos for the raft. As was Dungeon 5, which had a mandatory fight with Wizrobes who, not so fun fact, are immune to damage from the magic wand, even when I'm trying to spank their smug little twats with it. One more painful navigation to Ganon's room in Death Mountain and I claim the title of Swordless Master. This achievement can be summed up as beat the hard mode and make it way harder. Aside from that extra skill jump, there's a layer of calculated planning needed to succeed here. And finally, taking the throne as the most painful achievement in The Legend of Zelda, at the number 1 spot, is Swordless Adventurer. Get to Ganon's room in Death Mountain in the first quest without a sword. Interestingly enough, getting through Quest 1 without a sword is vastly more challenging than Quest 2 was. Like, if the last achievement was a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10, this is the 10. So, I got out the starting blocks in the same manner as Quest 2. Ran around to get some secret rupees so I could afford bombs, a candle, I even picked up the arrows. With that, I jumped into Dungeon 1 to grab the bow, which would be a lovely complement to my arrows. See, I never used the bow in Quest 2 because the magic wand was so obtainable early on. There was never a need for the bow. That's not the case in Quest 1 though. The magic wand is still a long stretch down the road, and the bow is a lesser stand-in. I won't look down on a new form of offense where I need it, but since every bow shot subtracts a rupee from my wallet, I had to be twice as mindful of rupees as a resource. Dungeon 3 had the potential to cause a kerfuffle, because I had to kill a room of Darknuts using only bombs again to access the room with the raft. This task in of itself ranked 6th earlier on this list. Dungeon 4, where I got all the way to the Gleeok fight, only to realize bombs, boomerang, candle, and arrows did nothing to his thick hide, so I left to fight another day. Since Dungeon 8 was another currently invincible Gleeok fight, and Dungeon 7 required the flute to get to, which I had yet to retrieve, my only remaining options for progress were to take on either Dungeon 5 or Dungeon 6. This would prove to be the biggest bottleneck and pure source of scalding agony for a long time. Dungeon 5 had not one, but 2 rooms of mandatory blue Darknut fights. The first containing 5 Darknuts in order to travel deeper into the dungeon, and a second room of 6 guarding the passage to the much needed flute. Now there was a bomb upgrade room nearby that would replenish me to 12 bombs, but I needed a bomb to get in there, meaning I would need to take out the first room of 5 Darknuts in only 7 bombs. Considering how often they change walk directions and tank explosions like they were gusts of wind, this was an insanely unfeasible task. Similarly, in Dungeon 6, there is a mandatory fight with 4 Wizrobes, and a ladder room of 5 Wizrobes guarding the magic wand. Like Darknuts, my only method of dealing damage was my very limited bomb supply. I couldn't get the bomb upgrade from Dungeon 5 without the help of the magic wand in Dungeon 6. But I couldn't get the magic wand without the additional bomb upgrade. I was stuck in a hopeless limbo with no idea how to progress. After my soul was sucked straight from my body in a wash of despair, I turned to YouTube to see how the speedrunners do it. And as if the sacred light of the most divine gamer gods had shone upon me, the answer was made clear. The block skip glitch, a very specific trick that would prove to be worth more than gemstones to me. If I could line Link's head perfectly in sync with the bottom of the pyramid-esque visual effect on one of these blocks, swing a weapon and look to the right immediately as I did so, I could glitch and walk right through it as if the block wasn't there. This meant I could skip the first room of Darknuts in Dungeon 5, keeping all 8 bombs on hand, using 7 of the 8 bombs to take out as many of the 6 Darknuts in the second room as possible, blow my way into the bomb upgrade room to replenish back up to 12 bombs, and take out what remained. Even this took several attempts, but it was a glimmer of hope that eventually succeeded after enough attempts. With flute and bomb upgrade in hand, Dungeon 5 was no more, and there was hope to fight the Wizrobes of Dungeon 6. Again, a very daunting task that took me no less than a fuck ton of tries to manage, but I got there eventually, and I claimed my magic wand. From that point forward, the rest of the game was smooth sailing. It actually wasn't. I still had 3 more dungeons to go without a sword, but at least the wand could act in its place, and nothing else would compare to the feat that I just endured. I thought a swordless Zelda run would prove to be a fun, thought-provoking challenge. While I did love the planning and brain-testing nature of routing the next path forward, the actual execution of fighting through it all made for a scream-inducing nightmare. Without a doubt, the cream of the crap for painful achievements here. With that completing the list, let's cut to the live version of me to throw this on the universal pain tier list. Alright, there we go. I don't know what happened. Super Mario 64 wasn't on here. I'm pretty sure I put it above Borderlands and below Uncharted last time. I hope. Maybe I should have rewatched the end of my video. I hope that's right. I hope that's where I put it. I'm gonna have to fix that later if it's wrong. But anyways, Zelda, Legend of Zelda. Dear Lord. Okay, so it's worse. This was much more painful than Call of Duty Rage Borderlands. I'm even gonna put it above Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 was painful, but it's above that. So is Zelda worse than Uncharted? Uncharted was very painful, but no, Zelda was worse. Yeah. Was it worse than Microsoft Solitaire Collection? No, definitely not. Playing several dozen hours of Solitaire and the fact that this had calendar-based stuff that if you missed it, you'd have to wait most of a year to do, sucked. So I think this is right. I think Zelda goes right here. It's going to be the second most painful, right below Microsoft Solitaire Collection. I think that's where I lay on this. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on The Legend of Zelda and any achievement-related content that you want to see, games you want to see. I love interacting with you guys, and I really appreciate you guys for sticking around. So thank you so much. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys next time.